Bitcoin is pumping, as you know, 93,000 American dollars for one Bitcoin. That's amazing. What on earth is going on, and where on earth am I? Well, I'm in El Salvador, of all places. I'm here at Bitcoin Boot Camp a little early. We've got 14 high signal, high quality Bitcoiners coming in. New Bitcoiners, clients of mine, Bitcoin OGs, Silk Road guys, real estate developers, or a couple of them, right? And so, yeah, good quality group here. And I was joking to my co-host here the other day that hopefully Bitcoin pumps when we have Bitcoin Boot Camp, because it's absolutely beautiful here. There's the front entrance. Over here is the pool, the ocean view right over there. And, you know, I was joking that hopefully Bitcoin pumps when we have this event, because that's just going to make the event that much more fun and hammer home the point and importance of having proper self-custody, zero single point of failure, all that stuff, right? So, but I did not expect Bitcoin to pump that much, right? So 93 is pretty high. That's amazing, right? You know, it was just like 63 a couple weeks ago. Then we went to 73. Then we went to 83. And now, you know, $103,000 per Bitcoin, you know, is what, like 10% away, something like that. So it's not too far, right? And will it happen? I don't know. I think, you know, at some point we got to run out of steam, right? At some point, Bitcoin has to consolidate, it has to flatten, right? So this kind of vertical up moves we've been seeing the last couple of weeks, of course, at some point it has to slow down. But I think the more important factor than the last couple of weeks of Bitcoin moving is keeping in mind the possibility that these rumors we're hearing of nation states getting interest in acquiring Bitcoin, you know, those rumors are just rumors. We don't know. But I do think there is a very real non-zero chance, non-zero possibility that there could be some nation state that right now is starting to buy Bitcoin. That is a massive move. Monday, this week, we set an all-time historical record for the largest increase in Bitcoin market cap in history, when we skyrocketed from the low 60s to mid 70s or something like that, right? You know, I'm guessing maybe by the end of today, we could set a new record, right? I think it's entirely possible by the end of this year in 2024, we can have 5 of the top 10 largest market cap moves in Bitcoin's history this year. And so my point is, that's a lot of capital, that's a lot of volume. And likewise, hash rate is also increasing at a very alarming rate. And so which country could that be? Obviously, I have no idea. But I do think, again, I want to hammer home, I do think the possibility of Donald Trump via America acquiring 1 million Bitcoin is a very big deal. Because what Donald Trump and the United States of America can do, which you can't do, I can't do, nobody else here can do, not even Michael Saylor can do, what nobody else can do besides the government, is set a price and just keep bidding up into can set a number of coins they want and just keep bidding up the price up into that point, right? Every time Bitcoin goes up, right, it went up another couple percent today, as a function of Bitcoin price going up, it makes it more difficult for us to reach our certain stacking goal. But for the United States, with their stacking goal, they could just keep printing money, issuing bonds, and converting other assets into Bitcoin until they get that number they want, right? Now keep in mind, 1 million Bitcoin for America is not the end, it's just the beginning. If America wants to meet its global gold allocation, right, 19-20% or so, they don't need 1 million Bitcoin. They need something more like 4.2, 4.3 million Bitcoin, a very, very large amount, right? So even if they are going to be buying 1 million Bitcoin, that's still in the very beginning. So what are the odds of that happening? Well, it's still a probability, it's still a possibility, we don't know. But I think every single day that goes by that we have these dramatic up moves in Bitcoin, we have to really consider an increasing possibility that some nation state maybe is buying. Maybe Putin is buying. Maybe the UAE is buying, right? Some nation state maybe is buying. Actually, that is my talk here at the Adopting Bitcoin conference coming up on this very weekend. My presentation, you know, to about 500 or so guests at the Adopting Bitcoin conference is going to be regarding nation state adoption and who is ahead. Essentially, you have El Salvador and you have Bhutan that are by far the most accelerated adopters of Bitcoin in the nation state level, right? Obviously, El Salvador and especially Bhutan are very tiny countries. However, all it takes is one G20 nation to start allocating to really get the arms race going. And so it is entirely possible this up move is just a matter of excitement or corporate adoption or some big billionaire or a couple big billionaires buying. That's entirely possible. However, the probability this is a nation state, I think, are going up, right? And the big problem, the big question in my mind when it comes to where is Bitcoin price going next in the future is, if this is a nation state, if this is not some billionaire, if this is not a corporation, if this is actually a nation state that's starting to dip their toe into Bitcoin, the problem is it is game theory hyper accelerated, right? If you have multiple nations, all the bonds in the world are insolvent. Every government is underwater on their debt. Every government has too many liabilities, too many promises, and too much paper given the size of their economies, right? Everyone's insolvent, but investors choose the least insolvent nation, the least unreputable nation, right? In this case, that's the United States, where I'm from, right? Now, if there is another nation that starts to actually back their treasury, starts to actually back their bonds, their notes, their principal protected notes with Bitcoin, all of a sudden that flips a switch. And maybe no longer is the largest country necessarily the most trustworthy or the least untrustworthy. All of a sudden, it's a new incentive to flock to the new bonds and the new principal protected notes, right? Again, with MicroStrategy, this is what we see with MicroStrategy. Investors flock to MicroStrategy because MicroStrategy has Bitcoin exposure. You can buy MicroStrategy converts, right? Their notes, where you get the upside of their equity, but you still have a certain amount of interest, right? And investors are willing to part with their fixed income capital at the Federal Reserve at 5 to 6% interest or whatever, and are willing to go to unsecured notes from a single corporation because there is that upside. And as we have more and more bonds created by these nation states, the incentive and demand for bonds that are actually going to retain some sort of real purchasing power is going to go up. So if that scenario is to unwind, is to kickstart, right, what's going to happen? Well, if I was China, or if I was Putin, what I would do right now is I would dump American treasuries, or I would convince my allies to dump American treasuries, force the American treasuries down, and with that new demand coming for our own treasuries, we could use that demand to acquire Bitcoin. Dump the competing nations' paper, back our own paper with Bitcoin, and therefore increase investor demand for our own paper in a positive feedback loop, right? And then we can maybe lower taxes on our citizens because we're having so much money from these bonds, therefore lowering the taxes, increased economic demand, rushing back into the country, and basically it's a speculative attack on the competing nations' bonds. Effectively, you are getting the spoils of war without going to war. Why would I go to war and spend all this productivity on building a new army to then go out and fight my enemy, when instead I could just do some basic accounting tricks that take no tanks to enforce, no hypersonic missiles to defend or to attack, right? And basically I can get more economic power. I can get more buying power for my bonds. Therefore, I can issue more paper onto the world, right? So that is, in my opinion, that is eventually going to happen. I did not think that would begin until the future. I thought, and I think most people thought, this cycle, 2024 to 2028, this cycle is about corporate adoption. And in upcoming cycles, that's when we get to the nation state level. However, there's a real chance, maybe, the nations front run the corporations. After all, even though they're the bigger monstrosities, and therefore I think it's a natural assumption to assume they're last, what if, because they're the biggest monstrosity and because they have the most to lose, why not them going first? I'm not saying they will, but I'm saying I think the odds of that are going up every single day. And so the importance is, if Bitcoin is effectively a global new economic war, a global new economic competition, what you have may appreciate in purchasing power much faster than what you expect. Personally, I do not expect Bitcoin to go to $800,000. I personally do not expect that. However, there are very prominent people within Bitcoin that have been in Bitcoin way longer than you, most notably Adam Beck, who was here way before anyone watching this, I guarantee it, right? Adam Beck, of course, was a Bitcoiner before Bitcoin was a thing, right? The point is, prominent people like that are saying it's entirely possible we can go to $500,000, $800,000 per coin. And I'm not saying I necessarily agree with that. I'm not even saying it's necessarily a high probability. But you have to keep this in mind. If you have 10 Bitcoin, there is a non-zero chance you're going to have $8 million in the next couple years, right? If you have half of Bitcoin, there's a non-zero chance you're going to basically have somewhere between $1/3 to $500,000, right? My point is, protect your Bitcoin, defend your Bitcoin as if it is already worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Protect your Bitcoin as if nation states have every incentive to acquire that Bitcoin, right? Your biggest problem in Bitcoin is not that you are too late to Bitcoin. Your biggest problem in Bitcoin, in my opinion, is that if anything, you're too early to Bitcoin. If we were to compare Bitcoin to prime real estate, right? If we're to compare Bitcoin to prime beachfront real estate, or we're to compare Bitcoin to, let's say, Manhattan, the best comparison, I think, is roughly the 1630s. You are so early to Bitcoin that in Manhattan terms, it's roughly 1630. We are still called New Amsterdam. We are still controlled by the Dutch. We're not in 1776. We're not even in 1700. We've got a few more decades under Dutch rule. Then the Dutch bond market will collapse. We'll transition to British rule, right? And then go another century. Then we'll have a revolution. Then we'll become America. And then it will be 1776 and we can grow from there, right? And so if you are so early to Manhattan that you own a couple square meters of dirt, actual dirt and real estate, or maybe you own a couple city blocks, or what eventually will become city blocks, you have to protect what you own. This land, this asset, this apex predator of money, which is Bitcoin, this is where Central Park is going to be constructed. This is where the Empire State Building will be erected. This is where the technologies of the future are going to be built upon. What you own, that precious Bitcoin and Satoshis you own, that is going to be the foundation upon which we price in all future technology and deflationary progress. And so you must defend that asset. People will come after you for that Bitcoin. You do not get to be the top 1 in 10,000 without the top 1 in 10,000 threats, right? There are maybe 1 in 1,000 people on the planet that own Bitcoin or are Bitcoin adopters. And you are probably in the top 10% of people that are using Bitcoin, right? If you have 1/10 of a Bitcoin, half of a Bitcoin, 12 Bitcoin, 36 Bitcoin, 8 Bitcoin, it doesn't matter the number. If you have a significant amount of wealth in Bitcoin, you're probably in the top couple percent of, what is already an exceedingly tiny portion of the world, right? So you have to secure it. I went surfing this morning, which is why my hair is all wet and messy. And I had a surf instructor because I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to surfing, right? I don't know how to do it safely. I don't know where's a good spot to surf, right? I don't know all the techniques, right? I need somebody with me. And so my point is, if you have a good amount of Bitcoin and you want to secure it, you want to protect it, right? Just like you hire a service provider to help you with a surf lesson, or you hire a driving instructor to teach you how to drive, you can hire a Bitcoin service provider to help you make sure you're using all of the products in Bitcoin to your advantage, right? Obviously, this is what I do. I'm not promoting any product in this video. There's no marketing budget from some company that they've paid me off to promote their product, right? Not that that's a bad thing, but this is why I highly encourage you consider a Bitcoin service provider. There are dozens of wonderful Bitcoin products, and you need somebody in your life, just like how a driving instructor will tell you the trade-offs of each different kind of car, or just like you need a surfing instructor to tell you all the different trade-offs of different surfboards, of different beaches, of different everything, right? In my opinion, it is highly advisable for you to consider having a Bitcoin service provider. If you hire me, if you hire the Bitcoin Advisor team, you have 40 people in your network that work for you to help you buy more Bitcoin, to help you stack more Bitcoin, to help you save on transaction fees and other kinds of fees, everything that comes with protecting your Bitcoin, right? So I highly encourage you, find the information in the link in the description below. Please reach out to me. I will get back to you as soon as possible. Obviously, I'm here with a few wonderful people waiting on another dozen or so Bitcoiners coming in. We've got a wonderful breakfast here right after our surf. But my point is, reach out now. Hire your Bitcoin service provider as soon as possible. If you want it to be me, I would greatly appreciate that, right? I was the first American of the Bitcoin Advisor team. Bitcoin Advisor team since 2016 has been helping people do this. We have a literal perfect track record so far to date. And so if you're looking for tax advice, trust advice, custody advice, right? Anything to protect your Bitcoin, I'm more than happy to help you. But even if you don't use me, just take action now. Because if this is true, that nation states are buying Bitcoin, things are going to go really, really, really quick, right? And everything we've seen so far is going to be a distant memory that you're going to forget about, because Bitcoin price will appreciate so fast, it will appreciate faster than your preparedness. So that is my big encouragement. be excited, be happy. I told you so, right? We're coming up on 100 grand US dollars per Bitcoin. That's all great, right? Here, obviously enjoying the fruits of our labor, right? Everything's wonderful. Yes, be excited, but understand the majority of threats to your Bitcoin are in front of you, not behind you. The majority of legal action, the majority of custody attacks, the majority of everything coming after your Bitcoin is in front of you. If you are in Manhattan in 1630, the majority of attacks against you to try to get your Bitcoin are in front of you when the land is actually worth something versus behind you when the land wasn't worth as much, right? Yes, obviously, Bitcoin has gone up by a factor of hundreds and thousands over the course of recent years, but it's going up again by the factor of dozens, hundreds, and eventually thousands, right? So it's critical, protect your Bitcoin and take action now, because I really, really believe as price goes up and sentiment goes up, retail interest goes up, corporate adoption goes up, churches start buying, millionaires start buying. As that happens, the time and availability to have somebody personally in a one-on-one service help guide you through all of the products, that is only going to get sucked up more and more. So if you're one of the dozen or so people watching this that's going to be here in a couple days, I look forward to seeing you. To everyone else, I wish you the best. Enjoy the price movement and take your Bitcoin custody and security seriously. If you want to hire me, there's information in the link description below. Otherwise, I wish you the best of luck.